Hello, spooky friends. I'm John, your host, and welcome to another episode of Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest. So I am super pumped. I have two very special guests with me today, Deklan and Jane from the Brutal, Bizarre, and Boozy podcast. I love that, by the way. That is a great title. And I highly recommend checking out their episodes. They have a really nice take on a whole bunch of different subjects. And I love that because that's really what we want to do in the podcast world. We don't want to be the same. We want to be a little different. And I'm glad they're different.
Right.
And they're fascinating. And I made a few drinks, guys, from when I listened to
We're glad. Nice. That's the goal.
Yeah, it is. It's a really cool thing. I love that.
Yeah.
So, whoever wants to start, Jane or Declan, tell me about yourselves and the podcast.
Go for it, Mom. You got this.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thanks, bud. So our podcast, as you said, Brutal, Bizarre, and Boozy podcast, we do one bizarre story, one brutal story, and then whoever's turn, we alternate who picks the drink for the week. And the drink has to link or tie into the story that the person is choosing the drink. So it ties in somehow. Sometimes it's a pretty obvious name connection, and other times it's just a weird, bizarre detail in the story, and we found a drink to go with it. So some of the drinks are good and some of them are garbage. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've had a few that we regretted making, but the link to the story was so good that we just had to go with it. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because it's like all drinks, right? You go to a bar or maybe you're at a friend's house and they're like, hey, I made a picture of whatever. And you try it and you go, oh, well, don't have that again.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So-
and then at the end of every episode, we do, because sometimes these stories are depressing and sad and gory and just a bummer and confusing. And so at the end of every episode, we each do a chaser, which is a fun story or a fun TV recommendation, movie recommendation, something along those lines to kind of make it a little bit on the lighter side.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely not, sometimes some of our stories are definitely not for the faint of heart and kind of a bummer, but that's life sometimes, right?
True.
Sometimes life, either it throws you lemons like the old cliche, you got to make some lemonade or I don't know, lemon meringue pie, whatever you want to make with those lemons.
Right.
So, tell me a little bit about what interested you in this, like, because I know you guys do paranormal and you do true crime and so many different things. But what interested you in a subject when you do this subject? Like, how do you choose that?
How do we choose each story?
Yeah, like how do you go? Like how there's so much stuff out there. How do you go? Like, more obscure stories? Do you go like, you know what? Let's just do this one. This is a good one.
I don't know about Deklan. I mean, I can only speak for myself. Some of the stories that I've chosen have been like stories that I grew up with, or something that happened. Like I've done several stories from our hometown. We live in I currently live here. It's a small town in Southern Oregon, just north of the California border. And it's a small town. It's very idyllic looking, but gross stuff happens here. So we've done a few of those kind of stories. Sometimes I pick my story based on the drink. I really want to have this drink, and I have to go find a story to go with it.
Nice. Deklan, how about you?
So for me, it's more of like if I hear a story on like some other podcast, or I mean, I've done a couple of things from my area but there's not a whole lot in the town that I live in
Okay.
to draw from as much as where my mom lives. Because, like she said, it's got nice parts and it's got some really, really messed up
Mhm.
stuff going on in it.
Mhm.
But,
Absolutely.
for me, I mostly like to pick something that I just can't get out of my mind. Like, let's say I hear a story and then I just
Mhm.
keep thinking about it all week, and then that's how
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know it's like
Right.
anything that I wanna personally know more about, I feel inclined to if I'm gonna do the research on it, might as well tell other
Yeah,
people about it too. Is the
absolutely.
thought process that I have.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so Jane, I'm gonna start with you. Give me an
Okay.
experience. It can be any experience, spooky, n personal, like, scary, it could be, like, uh, anything you want, and you can go back as when you were a little kid to now. So, tell me a story, like, you had that you're like, "Oh, man, that was ugh, I remember that."
So I there was, when I was younger, uh, I think a lot of younger people are afraid of ghosts and spooky stuff
Mhm,
and
mhm.
stuff, I what was that sound that came from outside? And so I
Right.
I tended to be a little like, "Oh, what's that?" And
Mhm,
um the way the house was that I grew up in, my parents'
mhm.
room was at one end of the house and mine was at the
Oh.
complete opposite end of the house.
Oh, boy.
And there were a lot of doors in between.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I grew up, I got up in the middle of the night one night to go to the bathroom, and I had to
Mm,
walk through the family room and the kitchen to get to the
mhm,
bathroom. And off of that kitchen straight line,
mm.
um, we had a laundry room. The lights were off. There was a light on in the kitchen. Mom and dad always left the stove light on or something. And I heard footsteps from the family room or from the
Oh,
laundry
yeah,
room.
right, right.
I could see directly into that room and there was no one there. There was nothing in there. It
Oh,
wasn't so dark
yeah.
that I couldn't see. And I heard distinct footsteps and a dragging sound. And I was
Ooh.
probably, I'm thinking about 13 at the time, 13,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
14, the
Right.
most.
Yeah.
I suddenly did not have to go to the bathroom. And I ran back to my bedroom and got in bed and was terrified of whatever that footstep dragging sound was.
Yeah.
I don't
Uh-huh.
know, but I
Yeah.
remember just being
Oh,
scared to
wow.
death
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
And then in
yeah.
high school, we
Mhm.
had for a creative writing class, we had to write a true story. And I wrote about this story, and my teacher
Yeah.
gave me a bad grade on it, which pissed me off
"No,
because
come
she
on,
said it
teacher."
wasn't believable, right?
"What?"
She said, if
"Come on."
why wouldn't I have gone to wake up my parents to tell
Uh,
them about it? And
right.
I was like, because
Yeah,
who wakes up their
yeah.
parents when they're that old?
Mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's my
absolutely. And
big spooky.
yeah, and you're never gonna your parents what are the parents gonna say to you? Like you probably said to your children, "Go back to bed."
Exactly.
I gotta work in the morning. Go back to bed.
Right.
All right. Yeah, come on.
Exactly.
So yeah. Uh, Declan, I'm gonna ask you a different question. Have you ever done research where you literally had to take a shower after doing the research because it was so just like, oh, this is horrible. This is like I gotta take a shower. I gotta take a break from this stuff.
Yes, so one case comes to mind, it's one of our earlier ones, I wanna say 6 or 7 maybe, but
Okay.
Issei Sagawa, he was
Ooh,
a
I know him. Yeah.
Yeah.
cannibal, a Japanese
Go ahead.
cannibal, and
Yeah.
it was kinda tough to find all the
Mhm,
information on the
mhm.
case, so I had to go to, like, this weird website, and they put the pictures of it on the, like, main screen of the website, and I
Ooh.
accidentally saw it, and it really made me sick, like, it was not
Oh,
good to look at. I would not
yeah.
recommend anyone go looking for those
No.
pictures, they're disgusting.
Now
But
they
yeah,
will,
that one
Declan.
really stuck in my brain. They probably will
Now
now
they
I told
will,
them not
Yeah.
to,
Declan.
but
For sure.
That's on them, not on me. I
Yeah,
told them not to,
that's
so if
okay.
they
not
want to
on
rebel
us.
and go look it up.
It is, yeah. It's not on us. It's not on Jane and Declan and myself.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That reminds me, I don't think you guys have done a story. If you, this I'll give you guys if you want to do this story, because I tried to do it and I can't do it. There was a group of men in the 70s, late 70s, 60s called the Chicago Rippers. Does that ring a bell at all?
I think so.
Okay.
I think I might have heard something about it.
Okay. So, warning, I don't know if it looks like you guys haven't done this. If you do this, just remember you're really going to have a hard time finding stuff. And when you do find stuff, it is very, very hard to even research. Some podcasts I've listened to it and they can't even get through it. They're like, I'm just going to skip over all this. It's terrible what they did to these women. They're called Chicago Rippers for a reason. So just imagine what they did to these women. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason we can't find this information is because this is so horrible that people are just, okay, let's not even bring it to light.
Right.
So that might be a good Halloween episode for you or something. That would make people go like, I've heard of these guys. And then when you start talking about them, they're like, oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah, those guys were pretty bad. They were really bad guys. Did some terrible things. But anyway, yeah, I know what you mean. And I've done some ghost stories too where I had trouble sleeping at night. Like literally, I'm like, it's that shadow. There's another shadow.
Right.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. So one of the other things I have to ask, Jane, I'll start with you. What's your favorite drink?
Okay. My favorite,
It doesn't have to be
used
alcohol.
to be, it used to be, I loved a good lemon drop. And since doing this podcast, I have really been forced to drink things that I thought I would hate. And I actually enjoy it. So, I like pretty much anything that's got citrus and that's fruity. And I like it to be sweet. I don't want to taste my alcohol. If I can taste the alcohol, I'm not going to drink it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big old sissy. So,
hey, it's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Declan, you got a favorite drink?
I do, and it's very simple. So I don't know if every liquor store has this, but mine does. But there's a twisted tea whiskey. And if you take that and do equal parts of that with some ocean spray, cranberry mango juice.
Nice.
It's really fucking good. Sorry if I can't curse. Can we curse on
that's
here?
Okay.
Let that one slip.
That's okay.
Okay.
Nope, we can. We can.
Okay, cool.
So one of the things I want to tell you, if you guys want to have me on your show, I have a 2 stories from 2 of the heavy hitter serial killers ever who, well, were in Wisconsin. One is Jeffrey Dahmer and one is Ed Gein. So if you guys want me to have me on, I'll go through those stories. All I can tell you is, I'll give you a little teaser for your audience too. All I can tell you is both of those things happened to people where they could have been killed. Like if they did not get out of there in enough time, both these people would not be telling that story. They would be dead. They'd be another victim. So how's that for a teaser for you?
That would work.
Nice.
We work perfectly too, because we haven't done either one of those stories yet.
No, we haven't.
Okay. I would love to be on your show. If you have an opportunity, I will tell those stories and you will not believe it. You will be like, come on.
Awesome.
But I can get the people to validate it for you. They're still alive.
Perfect.
Awesome.
One of the persons is still alive. All right. Nice. So let's get right into this. I will make sure to share all your social media and website links in this episode and all my social media so my spooky friends can find you, because you guys are really good and they'll love the podcast. So let's start.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, yeah, no problem. Jane and Deklan, what if I told you that a married couple in a small town in Wisconsin started an organization to research UFOs in the 1950s that led to the founding of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, which today is the largest UFO research network in the world. Sounds very crazy,
Oh, that's
right?
cool. Yeah, that's cool.
And yeah. And so before I get into everything here, so my sources are Wisconsin Fright's website, WVM website, MUFON website, and our Wisconsin Proud website. There's some really nice stories on this couple. I'd never heard of it. I'll be honest with you, Deklan and Jay, I never heard of them. But these people started something that they did not start this. Maybe MUFON and some other organizations may be coming out later, or they wouldn't be prominent as they are today. So it's pretty interesting. And then also I will talk about a UFO, huge UFO story here in Wisconsin that happened over Sturgeon Bay. So let's get into a little history. All right. So UFO history, and like I said, you guys chime in anytime you want. If you want to bring up some things, maybe you heard of this, or oh, maybe is that true? Because some of it's going to sound like, really, John? So anyway,
Well, I will say
go
that
ahead.
the only I mean I don't know that many UFO stories. I know there's a lot of them out there, and I know very few of them. But the only one that rings a bell for me on a couple side would be Betty and Barney Hill. So,
Yes,
but I don't know a lot of the detail in that. So if it's not that couple, I'm curious to hear
no,
what couple it is.
yes. So this
Cool.
is super interesting because, like I said, they started it all in the 1950s. So they precurse all the stuff that is big now. So like if you're watching the news, you've heard lately with the sightings from the U.S. military, they're releasing all this stuff. If this
Right.
couple did not start their own organization, who knows? They would be so away from any organization dealing with UFOs. So UFO history can be a little confusing how everything started. And in my humble opinion, the beginning of the mystery of UFOs was started on a sunny summer day in Barron, Wisconsin in 1934 with a woman named Coral. I love that first name, by the way. We should have named my daughter that. Coral Lorenzen. Okay. And check out the books. I love people in the 50s and 60s. They really are, how do I say, politically correct. So this is her book
Yeah.
she wrote later in life in 1966. The title of the book is this: Flying Saucers and the Startling Evidence of the Invasion from Outer Space.
That sounds so ominous.
Right. She just gets right into it. There's startling evidence that we're being invaded.
Yes.
See that on your bookshelf.
Right.
So I love that title. So Coral, this woman, you'll learn a little bit more about her. When she was just 9 years old, her and two friends watched an object. This is in 1936 that she described like an open umbrella without the ribs or spurs glide silently through the sky and vanish over the horizon. So she saw this as a little kid, and will bring this up. I will bring this up again. She still remembers that this in where she was just sitting there watching this UFO in the 30s. Now think about that for a second, Jane and Declan. I mean, that's right.
Crazy.
It's the 1930s. UFOs, maybe not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I
That is
don't
so weird.
Right.
because I know like an explosion of UFO slash alien sightings happened after the like some of the first alien movies, but I don't think they had alien movies back in the 30s. I
No.
think that was
No.
later.
No. Correct. And you will learn later. This is crazy. So Barron, Wisconsin in 1934 was about 1,500 people. So in other words, everybody knew everybody, right?
Right.
And airliners were rarely, if ever, seen. It's also safe to say the old excuse of weather balloons were never seen. So basically, this small town there wasn't planes flying over. There weren't weather balloons flying over. It's a small town in northern Wisconsin, and this little girl sees this UFO with a couple of her friends, and from that time, just stuck with her. And the thing, this is a quote from her, and this is when she was like a little kid. She put in her book. She said, "The thing was in the west southwest when I first noticed it. I called it to the attention of my two playmates." That's so cute. And one said she thought it was a parachute. Its color was a glowing white. The object was about as large as a dime. So I don't know how they saw that, but okay. Held at arm's length. There were no ropes or lines suspended from it, and therefore no parachutist. So right then
Right.
and there,
Yeah.
she's like a little kid, like, I didn't parachute. Why would someone parachute over Barron, Wisconsin? Like, well, it doesn't make any
Right.
sense. Her other thing, she said, it made
So
no sound. It wobbled in a
Oh.
northwest direction across the clear, and make sure everybody understand this, clear, cloudless sky. It wasn't going fast. Rather, it was poking along at a leisurely rate of speed and with a rather strange motion that had been described in recent reports. And she did some different things. Kind of people saw similar things. So the reports it as undulating. So
Ooh.
I thought that was really interesting. Now, granted, she didn't use the word undulating when she's 9 years old. This is in
Yeah,
her
right.
book, but from her memory and stuff. She said she watched the thing for 20 seconds, then it appeared to go over the horizon and perhaps it came to rest north of Barron in vicinity. And remember this, this is a big thing that we're seeing today with UFOs. In a body of water referred to locally as the upper dam. So it's like you, Jane. She went home and she told her father, but her father, I thought this was interesting. He made inquiries on the matter and it was dropped. No one has seen the object. And the three children had watched it, to see if there's any news or anything like a parachutist or balloons or anything. No, there was nothing. So it was dropped. People just are like, oh, little girls
Right.
when they're doing that.
Little
But
girl
I
saw
just thought
something.
that, yeah. But I thought that was super interesting that she can remember. It's so vivid, right? Now,
Oh,
that's not
right.
usually the case, right? And one of the things is Carol's sighting predated the 1947 Roswell crash, right? And you know Roswell, right? Or at least have heard of it,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And the resulting UFO flap, as they call it, by 13 years. So she was already ahead of the game. She already, had UFOs. But at this time, there was no one to talk to. Maybe dad went to the local sheriff. Hey, my daughter saw something. The local sheriff went, okay. And that was it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
I was
Um,
I was
Go ahead.
gonna say it could have been like a weather balloon, like in Operation Mogul, which is the
Mhm.
one of the big talking points of Roswell, that it was a weather balloon, but that wasn't started until the 40s. So obviously, it's not going to be one of those
Right.
weird weather balloons that might have been a UFO, might not have been, but that since it's so early, there's no way to know really.
Right. Exactly. And Carol wrote to, Coral wrote to, excuse me. Let me see, Carol, it's Coral actually. She wrote that there's no explanation for what I've seen. And this was, she wrote in her book, and I thought this was really kind of a funny quote. She said, there might be intelligent life on other worlds, and their ships were strange things people had reported in the heavens from time to time throughout the years. So she's she's a very astute woman, like, hey, this has been happening for a long time, right? And
Yeah.
people have started um, reporting it. Really, the 1950s was the first time that anybody, or in the 50s, where you would see, like, in the 50s and 60s, those cheesy UFO movies where
Right. Yeah.
the
The
aliens
flying
coming down.
saucer.
Yeah. on the string.
Yeah. Yeah, and they all look the same.
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
interesting thing. Like,
There's like a fat guy in a gorilla suit with like a astronaut helmet on.
right.
You're like, so one of the things is in 1950, in the 50s, they started reports were coming into the U.S. Air Force. And this is, you guys familiar with Project Blue Book?
I am slightly. Declan might be
Okay.
more. I'm not sure. I've
Declan, are you
heard it.
familiar with Project Blue Book at all?
Yes, a little bit. I don't know the
Okay.
full details, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So Project Blue Book was started in the 50s to report all the UFO sightings because there were so many. So they actually sent out people to look at this and see what it's called. Now, I'm glad they changed the name because the first name of this is called Project Grudge. Why would you call something
Grudge?
Project Grudge? I have
That
no
is
idea.
weird.
Any thoughts on that?
I just want to know who's in charge of picking so-called
Yeah,
project names. Like
yeah,
MK Ultra, who came up with that? Who came up with Project
exactly.
Mogul? Who came up with Project
Yeah,
Stargate? Like all these weird things that just like random words put together, it seems like.
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, there's just some intern. There's some poor intern that go, "Hey, Jimmy, come up with a name. I don't know, Stargate.
Flip
Perfect."
to a random page in the dictionary and picks a
Yeah.
word blindfolded.
I do. I think they'd like maybe they put a bunch of words in a hat and they just draw out 3 and go, "Yeah, that sounds good."
I don't think you guys are off at all. So anyway, in the Project Blue Book, you can go. Everyone to look at this because this obviously was a huge thing. It's after a few years they stopped it because basically, in my opinion, and now they're coming out with all this stuff. The UFOs had already been captured by the United States government, and you see more and more people coming out with that, and you're kind of like, okay, maybe not. And then more and more evidence is being released about this and UFOs, how we've
Right.
caught all these different UFOs and everything. So it's interesting. But most of the times in the 50s, they just still dismissed it, and they just did these poor investigations and worse explanations of what's going on. So it's like it's swamp gas, it's a weather balloon, you had something in your eye. What?
Yeah.
I mean, come up with better reasons, right? Um, so anyway, Coral, still captivated by what she saw years earlier, realized there needed to be an organization so amateur researchers could investigate and UFO sightings and exchange information. So she and her husband Jim, in 1952, founded the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, or APRO. And this is the first of its kind. So this is the organization that started in their little living room with this little couple in the 1950s. And I think that's pretty cool, right? Isn't that nice where you like hear people where they'll be like starting something and they're, whether it's like paranormal research, whether it's, you hear all these people talking about serial killers, maybe how they helped the police and how they invented all this stuff that capture serial killers. I think that's really interesting. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's cool that they started this up on their own and, just because of something that happened to her and when she was a
Yeah.
child, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really
So
interesting.
I
So
I
go ahead,
feel like
Declan.
it would be hard to convince fellow Wisconsinites of that. Like I've
Right.
never been to Wisconsin, I should say, but I'd imagine a lot of them are skeptical to the theory of aliens or extraterrestrial visitors.
Yeah, like everywhere, right? Or at least
Yeah.
back then, there would be some like in
Especially back
California.
then.
Yeah, especially maybe a little more like in California or on the Pacific, in the Northwest and everything, where people are maybe seeing them a little bit more. And there's some really cool abduction stories in those areas, which again, people still don't believe them. Like Betty and Barney Hill, no one believed them.
Right.
Like,
Right.
even though they had some pretty substantial evidence that either one, these people are doing a great con, which I applaud you because that's a lot of work, or
Yeah.
this
And
really, really happened, right?
I never understand the argument of, oh, it's just a con and they're just
Hmm.
making up a story because
Hmm.
I mean, there are a few people who like negative attention. I get
Yeah,
that. But for the most part, God, somebody's constantly looking at you and talking about you all the time,
right.
which can be really daunting.
Hmm.
I wouldn't want
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
I wouldn't make up
Yeah,
stories for
right.
people to talk about me.
Yeah, and that's what happened to Betty and Barney Hill. Just people were constantly bugging them and calling them and dealing with crackpots, and other people were just like, okay, you guys are on something, or there's something going on, or you're mentally whatever. And that's tough. I
Right.
mean, that's not nice to come up with that. So, in a 1972 book, I thought this was super interesting, called The UFO and Experience, a Scientific Inquiry by J. Allen Henrik. He wrote that while APRO had its number of members who were over enthusiastic and enamored with the ideas of UFOs, he stated it was not a crackpot organization. Well, thanks, Jay Allen. That APRO
Yeah.
actually had many serious members, many who have considerable technical and scientific training. So the biggest thing about MUFON right now is there's a bunch of guys with tinfoil hats that show up in your house, and you might be like, okay, get out of my house.
Right.
Because they're
Yeah.
yeah, right? They're the typical if you watch, like, Men in Black, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie with, Will Smith,
Yes.
it's just kinda right? I don't know, right, so that was interesting to me. Um, One of the other things to let you know is the Lorenzens were living in Sturgeon Bay, and I know you guys have no idea where that is, but
No.
it is, like, up northern Wisconsin where there isn't many people at that time. So you might have, like I said,
Okay.
a big town is 1,500 people. Most towns, maybe 200, 300 people, and you're surrounded by woods. There's just woods,
Mhm.
woods, woods wherever you go. So, like, Pacific Northwest, when you get up and, there where it's just forest, same thing. So
Yeah.
they were doing that from there. So not exactly the Mecca like a Chicago,
Right.
LA, right? Nothing like that. One of the things too, Coral, she actually worked for the Green Bay Press Gazette, and she wrote on these stories too. So you can go back and you can look at all the stories she wrote about tracking down sightings. So I don't know how she convinced her boss, but she would every sighting that would happen in Wisconsin, she would go and talk to people and write everything down. So she would, for instance, she talked to this one farmer, and she said that there was this formation over his farm about just some silver globe shaped object, and she would talk to people like that, farmers, workers, you name it. And if she didn't do that, this would not go. This, like I said, this the whole UFO excitement or whatever you want to say would have died because people would have just been like, okay. And then maybe in the 70s, 80s, it might come forward. But most of the time in this era, no, you kept it quiet. You did not bring anything up. So that's
So she was
interesting to me.
basically the alien and UFO reporter instead of the
Yes.
sports reporter.
Yeah. She would do her regular
Nice.
stories, and then her boss would be like, so she'd do a regular story like, I don't know, there's an event downtown in Sturgeon Bay, the typical whatever parade. And then she'd go like, okay, now I'm going to go over and do aliens.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right? That's a cool
Yeah,
job. What do you think, Declan?
I think that's pretty sweet. I mean, the only reporter I can think of like that that had a specific, like, news section of strange things, including UFOs and whatnot, is, I think it's Tom Greer. He used to work
Mm,
for, KWVA or some LA
sure.
news company and switched to doing, like, he did everything from UFOs to, like,
Nice.
uh Like the Manson murders, he covered those for a while, like
Mm,
a bunch of
mm,
weird things that other traditional
yeah,
news sources wouldn't cover, and I think that's really cool. Just taking
yeah,
like a
that is,
step out of bounds almost.
yeah. And imagine all the people saying to her, like, "Here comes the crazy UFO lady." You know what I'm saying? She had to
Right.
endure that
Yeah.
Yeah.
too. Yeah, because this is the 50s, where political
Right.
correctness, there is no political correctness.
Right. No, there was
Yeah.
not.
So one of the things I'm going to cover here on another episode, I was going to cover with you guys, but it was too much research. But I'll have to cover it on another episode. So Coral, excuse me, she experienced actually several sightings during her life. So just when she wasn't a little kid. So there's a lot of stories that, well, when I was a little kid, I saw this, and that's all I saw. Like
Mhm.
she's numerous ones, including the Sturgeon Bay flying saucer. And I'm going to give you guys just a little tease of this because this is absolutely, it's funny and scary at the same time. I don't know if that,
Ooh.
that works for you guys, but hopefully so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on May of 1952, Coral Lorenzen, along with countless others across Door County, witnessed what came to be known as the Sturgeon Bay flying saucer. So the object in the skies over Sturgeon Bay appeared to be metallic with a bright glow, and it was visible. Now get this, for 50 minutes. It went very
Wow.
slowly towards the northeast. And like I said, people could see this for 50 minutes, countless people. Okay. And based on the
That's wild.
calculation, yeah, I know, from observations made in Sturgeon Bay as well as Fish Creek, which is 30 minutes north. I know you guys don't know this, but still towns. It
Mhm.
was like coming over towns. This is crazy. Coral and her husband, Jim, don't forget about Jim, he worked with her too, estimated this, this is nuts, the object to be 780 feet in diameter at an altitude about
Wow.
40 miles. So think about that.
Holy
You're outside,
cow.
yeah, you're outside and you're just, I don't know, mowing the lawn or whatever. And here comes this over 700-foot in diameter metallic object just slowly going over you. And it's only 40 miles up. So that's not high. That's not that high.
Yeah.
It's high enough, right? That you can't touch it, which is good. Um, but wouldn't that just be bizarre? Because it was just going slow. No
Yeah.
one, the speed on it was, they were saying like maybe 5 to 10 miles an hour, just hovering, just coming over you.
That's
That's
And it,
super weird.
crazy.
right? And people didn't hear anything. They just saw this bright object. And again, take yourself back to the 50s. Okay. Today we're so, you pick up your phone. There's a UFO. There's an alien. Okay, whatever. Fake, not fake, whatever.
Right.
Then
Yeah.
you're just some small time farmer. You're just some person that's never,
Right.
ever in your life. This is before the moon landing, right? In the 60s.
Yeah.
You've never seen this. And this thing is just
Right.
hovering. I don't know about you.
Well,
I'm scared.
that'd be yeah, for sure.
Yes. That's terrifying.
Absolutely.
Uh,
No, thank
now
you.
here comes the fun part. This is I couldn't believe this. I had to look at it again. So, and many attempts were to explain this sighting were made over the next few days. Like government was coming in, blah, 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 blah. General Mills Company in Minneapolis. General Mills, I'm not kidding, the cereal company, okay, with all
Cool.
their Lucky Charms and whatever, took
Yes.
credit.
Delicious. Oh,
So General Mills,
okay.
yes, again, I'll repeat this cereal company took credit, claiming it was one of their balloons they were developing for upper atmosphere research. They said they had launched one that morning and it could have been seen over Door County that evening. Now, they already screwed this up because people said they saw it in the afternoon. They did not see it in the evening. Okay, so they're already wrong.
Oh, okay.
General
Trying to
Mills.
figure out their cereal would last in space. What kind of
Yeah.
atmospheric research is General Mills
Right?
doing?
Yeah. So General Mills, oh my God, this is so weird to me, was working in conjunction with U.S. Air Force to make weather balloons. Huh?
Sure.
You guys explain this to me, Jane or Declan. Explain. I am totally like, what?
Well,
I
Lucky
know that's
Charms weather
like
balloons.
yes. They want to expand. They don't want to get pigeonholed. So they need to broaden their the market of people that they deal with, because not everybody's going to eat cereal for breakfast.
Mhm.
So, they gotta, they're diversifying.
Sure.
Yeah,
I buy that. That's you
for
would be a
sure.
great press. You would be one of those great like press agents or those spin artists sitting up at the podium when people are going,
Right.
you're making weather balloons? I don't get that. And you're
Yeah.
like, you tell that story, I get it, right?
Yep.
Declan, you
Yep. We're
explain.
diversifying.
I think General Mills saw all the UFO stories that Coral was shining light on, and
Mhm.
they wanted to send a peace offering to any aliens or extraterrestrials that
There
wanted
you
to
go.
visit. They wanted to send them a big old bag of Lucky Charms
Sure.
for him to try.
Yes.
America's favorite
See,
snack.
Yes. They're magically delicious
you
on
guys
more
nailed
than one
it.
planet.
You guys nailed this. That's exactly what the no, I'm just kidding. That wasn't their explanation. But wouldn't it be funny if it was? I'll get into it more. I'll have to do an episode on this. But General
Yeah.
Mills came out later and they just kept on hammering this. They kept on saying, yep, we did it. Don't worry. It was us. And then people would ask them questions and they'd be like, yeah, Lucky Charms. And they keep going. And people would be like, wait, what? And so to this day, people are not sure what the truth was, and no one's come forward to say, yeah.
So weird.
Weird. I don't get it.
Because
But I don't
usually,
get a
like
lot.
UFO sightings, I guess
That go
maybe
back
this is
to
just a
APRO
recent
that started.
UFO
Yeah,
sightings, but
yeah, yeah.
like
And
most
yeah.
UFO
Oh, go
sightings are
ahead.
super fast, but that one flew over extremely slow. So
Very
it's kind of it's weird.
right, right. And that was pretty much the story of UFOs back in the 50s and 60s. They were not like the ones you saw in the military videos where they're just zipping across the sky and our jets can't even forget it. You're not going to catch it.
Right.
But the whole thing was water. So all these UFO sightings, they all go back to one thing: water, a big body of water. So, you know, all these big Great Lakes in the upper Midwest, I mean, you could hide a colony or something, which people do believe. So
Yeah.
it's kind of fascinating to me that they all have that in common, water. So in 1969's Pro members started the Midwest UFO Network, which is now MUFON, and they had some really interesting people, like associate professor of chemistry here at Wisconsin State University was the first director of MUFON. MUFON is still active today. They still have chapters in every state, some 3,000 members, and they have more than 390 field investigators actively investigating reports of unidentified flying objects. So, Jake and Declan,
Wow.
yes, you can join MUFON. All you have to do is pay the fee, and you can actually
Of
get
course.
which I did. I have a little lanyard that says official UFO investigator.
Nice.
And
Nice.
yeah,
Funny.
so there you go. I can't remember how much it was. I think it was like $50. They send me newsletters and everything. They're interesting. You can go to their organization. So the organization here in Wisconsin, sometimes it's in our capital, Madison, or Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Yes, you can go there. Yeah, I just did it for fun. I'm just gonna be honest with you because I wanted to be say a part of MUFON. Um, but you
Yeah.
can. Yes, there is no.
Have you
You can't
investigated
say.
anything?
Yeah, right. And bring your Lucky Charms, I guess, and then we can go from there.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
So the
Sure.
Lorenzens, Coral and Jim, eventually moved to Arizona. Everybody moves to Arizona from Wisconsin, by the way, because we're sick of winters when we get older. Where
Uh-huh.
Jim spent some time working as an electronics, and I think this is interesting. He worked as electronics technicians at Holloman Air Force Base. So I'm like, oh, Jim, you little
Ooh.
sneaky little guy there. You got in with the Air
Yeah.
Force.
He was
Interesting.
trying to dig around in some stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And he passed away in 19
Hello?
this for over
Hello?
30 years before MUFON took over. And it's really interesting. One of that led to this huge organization of MUFON and all these different investigations would not really happen today if it wasn't for these Jim and Coral, because eventually people would have took over, but they were serious. They said, "I'm going to investigate this. I'm going to put the research in. I'm going to find people who understand physics and chemistry and biology." You know what I'm saying? That to
Yeah.
me made them different, rather than two
Oh, for
guys in the
sure.
woods, right? Tinfoil
Yeah.
hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. They
So
made the
that's interesting.
effort to get some good data.
Actual research. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great.
So
Instead of just
so there's
finding the local
been
drunk guy at
go
the
ahead.
bar and asking him about
Right.
Yeah, right.
UFOs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I miss the days where it was two Southern guys, and I don't mean to pick on my Southern states who listen to me, where they're like, "Well, me and Zeke were out in the dock fishing, and a UFO came and took us," and you're like, "Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
right?"
Yep. I love
You're like,
it.
Yeah." So there's been numerous UFO cases in Wisconsin, which is I did on past episodes. One of the things that I think the reason they're attracted to Wisconsin, because there's been like 10 or 15 like major cases here in here, because one thing we do have a new, believe it or not, we have a huge ammunitions plant in Wisconsin where they make ammunition for armies across the world. We also have a number of scientific places where they work on different physics experiments as well. We have army bases all over the place who study different technologies. So it's kind of interesting. Now, we're nothing like, obviously, other states like California or Texas where they have some of the secret stuff, right? In there.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. UFOs typically go around places, especially like nuclear reactors. Um, Anything with technology or anything, you will see that. So that was really interesting when I was reading all these UFO cases, and like in different parts of the state, we have UFO parades. We have where people
Oh
dress
wow.
up, and yeah, it's
That's
fun. It's
fun.
right where you can go out and you dress up like an alien. You go out there and everyone it just has a great time. So it's really really nice that people kind of take it with a grain of salt and also maybe a little seriously now. So, Jane, I'll start with you. What do you think of UFOs and alien life? Do you have any theories on them? Do you believe it, not believe it?
I I have never personally seen anything that I would say, "Oh, I don't know what that was. I think that might have been a UFO."
Yeah.
But I am also not so arrogant to think that there's no way we're the only
Mhm.
intelligent life form out there.
Yeah. Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if somebody came up and said, "Yeah, those animals that we think were from here actually came from another
Yeah.
planet." I'd be like, "Okay, yeah,
Okay.
why not?"
The, pl-
So
the
I'm not
platypus
a
being one of them.
disbeliever. Yep. Why not? Why not?
Yeah. Declan, what do you think?
I think there are aliens out there and they have visited Earth, but I think a majority of the more recent UFO sightings and things like that are government-made vehicles. I think after
Okay.
Roswell specifically, they because in the 50s, I want to say, there was something called the Flux Liner made, and it was made by Lockheed Martin, the people that make all the fancy F-15 jets and all that.
Mhm.
They experimented in creating a anti-gravity, basically a UFO. Like there's pictures of it. If you look up Flux Liner, I'm sure you can find them, but
Yeah.
it looks like a UFO that someone had designed, and I think a majority of them are, like, at least nowadays, are government-made vehicles. That's
Yeah. Y
my beliefs.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting, like, who has the alien technology, who's using it, why haven't will they use it in the future, will they not? I think those are just fun questions to ask, but I'm like you guys, that we
Mhm.
can't be naive enough to think we're the only life. I think
Right.
that's ridiculous. I really do. So,
Um,
that's it. I hope you guys had a good time. Um, it
Definitely.
was
Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, please listen to Jane and Declan on their podcast because, like I said, they cover some really cool things and make a drink or two. And I love it. So, just to let you guys know, this will drop tonight. So, you can check it out and share that with
Cool.
your audience so they can hear your
Definitely.
views on UFOs.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you ever want me as a guest, that's awesome. I'll
For
definitely be on
sure.
there for you and tell you those
Yeah,
2
we'd love
serial
to
killer
hear
stories.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So before we end every show like this. Say hi to your ghost. So, hello, ghost, because we like to be friendly with
Hi.
our ghosts,
Mhm.
and stay spooky. All right.
Definitely
Thanks,
stay
Jane
spooky.
and Declan.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night.
Thank you so much, John.
You too.
You too.
Yep. Bye-bye.